Alrighty, I'm gonna do something in particular. Before I went to bed, I was like, oh, I was looking through my notes, and I was like, I'm gonna do a cross section of a smile face that I saw that was like a one-piece fan art or something, and I can't find it for the life of me. And I am ill prepared because my Wacom isn't even plugged in. But if I can't find that, then I don't know, maybe we'll just do a generic cross section of a face, or we'll do whatever y'all feel like doing. I'll leave it up to y'all. Okay, so let me see if I can find what I was going to try and find, which would be underneath my recording. I think we were doing some character creator stuff, and it was like a goblin face. I think it was a face tool thing. Face. Well, the cool thing about the face tool is I do have some recordings in here and some smile. You know what? Let me do this. Everything app. I'm going to look for smile. We'll do an expression. And we'll sort by size. And let's open this path. There we go. So in here, I have a whole bunch of expressions. So in here we have maybe a smile, frown, yeah, smile. Cool. So here's just me doing a smile. So I can use this to go through and do an expression. We'll keep this handy. And John Yu. Oh, hey, absolutely. Glad to be back after I'm on here. God, I only get on my personal computer like once a month now, which is kind of sad. But like I always say every stream, maybe someday I'll be back to my normal cadence. So we have that, and I'm also going to look for, you know what, we'll do, I basically just need some recording. Need something with a topology that I can scooch around. And this is just my face. Goblin, troll, goblin variant, vampire face, troll. I guess we'll just stick with goblin too. All right. And most of the stuff's really old, so oh god. All right. Okay, well, I'll just open up one of these and we'll pray for the best. So this is all skin clean. Let's open up this one, see what it looks like. That'll work. So we'll go ahead and turn on X symmetry here. What do we got? We got a base body. I'm going to go ahead and turn. This looks like it has a texture loaded in. So we'll go near the texture map. No, polypaint. Let me see, Alt tap to select it. Base body, polypaint off. There we go. So let's go to a white, and let's go to a startup material, which in our case is going to be this green metallic looking material. You know, we don't need all of this, but if we were going to do, say, a cross section of this face, let's go ahead and add a few more visible subtool counts. We'll say 9. And we don't need all this reference in there. Oops. Go ahead and kill these. That's why this file was so big. There we go. So if we wanted to do a cross section of a face, that's basically going to be pushing in. And I wish I could find what I was looking for. It was a one-piece something or other comic book that had like a smile face, and then it was like split into like 3 parts, like just like a cross section through the head that I thought looked pretty cool, and I can't find it for the life of me. But all we need to do is, if we want to do like a Boolean, we're going to go in here to append, and we'll just grab a cube 3D. And here's the cube. So we'll go ahead and Alt tap it to select that subtool, and we'll go ahead and scale this in a little bit, and we'll make it pretty thin. So if we go in here, well, actually we don't need to make it pretty thin. We can start let's start wide. So I'm just going to basically push this, and we'll just do it for the head for now. I guess we can scale this down. So we're going to push this into the head, and while it's pushing into the head, this is actually something you can do if you're going to like 3D print something, is you can like look for gaps. And one thing that we're going to do if we're going to be doing cross sections is we don't need stuff like the eye winker in this case, which is our eyelashes. So we'll go ahead and just turn that off. Eye occlusion we don't really need. The base eye we'll go ahead and leave in. Tear ducts I guess we can leave in. The tear line is just like a rendering shiny thing for your eyeball. We don't really need that, so we'll go ahead and turn that off. Everything else should be in here. So with this cube selected, we're going to set this to subtractive here, and then we're going to go over here and turn on live Boolean. And then as I push this back, let's go ahead and set that in the middle. Yeah. So as I push this back, it's going to start eating through the face here. So this is where we're going to get kind of a cross section. So as it kind of goes through the face, you're going to end up with cool little shapes like this. And places where it could be problematic. Let's go ahead and hold down. So if I go out of live Boolean, you're going to see this is just in the middle of this object here. If I wanted to leave it this big but move the gizmo where it's a little bit more handy for me to grab, I can just hold down Alt and scoot the pivot in there, and or you can go in here and just scale this down a little bit so it's just a little bit more head sized, a little easier to grab. We can scoot in here. So we'll turn live Boolean back on. So essentially what I would look for is just kind of going through and picking a couple spots, like maybe here and then maybe here, to take a cross section of the face, and then we could slice this out and 3D print it and I don't know, use it as a paperweight or something. Now, in order for, if we were going to 3D print this, we'd want this to be pretty smooth, and right now these things aren't subdivided like the eyeballs or anything like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and Alt tap those subtools and then just hit Control D. Or if we wanted to, if we're going to be doing a Boolean later, we can always, instead of explicitly going in here and saying divide, 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 and you know, putting this up to 40,000 polygons or whatever, we could go into dynamic subdivision, just turn on dynamic. That's D to turn it on, Shift D to turn it off. You can say yes, and that'll give you a dynamic subdivision. So we'll say D on this one. Now this skin right here does have explicit subdivision. So here's subdivision level 1 here. And then all the way up to subdivision level 6, and it's got all the details on it. And then for the teeth, same deal. I guess we'll go ahead and just hit D on that one and D on this one. So we're not going to do explicit just yet, but we can always do that later. Now, problematic thing, if we are going to do Booleans, we need to go ahead and cap these. So let's do Shift D. And if we go down here to display properties, we can turn on double. And you can kind of see like, okay, none of the teeth are capped and this whole back area isn't capped. You could do this manually. So if we wanted to go through here and like, you know, BZM for your Z modeler brush, we can go through here and like bridge edges and stuff, which I guess we could do. Yeah, we could do a, I think I want to say, let me look, actually, let's look at, I can't believe, like last night I was all prepared for this. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to do. And then I can't even find what I was looking at. Maybe maybe I dreamed it. So this is going to be my YouTube channel. Okay, I have links here. And my ArtStation page. So if you want more resources, I'm just going to post these here. Go ahead and paste that there. So we got the YouTube channel, and then we got the ArtStation page. And on here, so we have some like, actually it was probably this smiley guy was the one I was looking for, headshot workflow. Maybe I'll look that one up. This is the one that I thought, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but if you wanted to do 3D print stuff, I feel like I got some 3D print stuff on here. I seriously don't remember. Yeah, I got some 3D print stuff on here. So posing and 3D, oh, there it is. Something like this. So going through here, and you can load up your clothes and your skinning and go through here and pose it out. And then you could go and drop in animations, and then you could send that back over to their pose link tool. And then you can go in there and put in your key registration and then just go ahead and print it out. So I guess that's kind of what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be manually Booleaning some stuff for this guy's face. We're going to do a cross section of a face, kind of like the 3D print version of like the DICOM viewer. So if you want to know more about anatomy and stuff, I do go into how to download and use a DICOM viewer to kind of go through and look inside body parts, kind of like this. Now, this one is expressionless, and we could go ahead and we could just sculpt in a smile. I was hoping I could kind of bounce back and forth. This was O2 clean skin. Let's see if I can go ahead and find that real quick. I'll move this down here. Goblin 2. Might be able to just load this one up. I think we can toss this one back and forth. And we can get expressions. But, so we'll go ahead and, like I said, we'll hit D. Now, okay, this is a good point. So before I go through here and start capping geometry, if I want to link this back to this program here, Character Creator, I have to keep the vertex order the same. So let's go ahead and see if this will work. So the first thing I need to do is make sure I have GoZ loaded, because I just loaded this up today. This may not work. If not, we can always just sculpt a smile face just by moving the verts around, but we'll see if we can save a little bit of time. So I'm going to go over here to all low. This is everything in my scene that is, and everything should be named. Base body, this polycube we don't need anymore. That's just our Boolean mesh. And I'm going to see if I can link these both back up real quick. And actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and do a quick save here, and then we'll do a file new, because I'm going to try to do something real quick. Let's go ahead and say delete all. I need to get this set up. We're going to say props PBR. Yeah, let's load up an anvil, and we will say GoZ plus yes. Oh, close ZBrush. Helps if you read the error message. We'll say yes. Okay. We're going to enable. There we go. Okay. Sorry, that'll allow me to kind of go back and forth, so I can pose the face out, send that geometry over with face changes to ZBrush, and then that'll give us a, there we go. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So we've got that set up, and now if I go in here to Z plugin, we have a GoZ Plus installed. Yay! All right, so we'll go ahead and say delete all. I'm going to say, so when I hit quick save, which I don't know if you can see, let's see where you all are at. Yeah, it's just out of screen, but if I lower the screen down a little bit, you'll see we have a quick save button. If I hover over this, that's the hotkey for that is 9. So if you just hit 9 on your keyboard, or just go there and hit that quick save button, you can go in here to your quick saves just by hitting comma on your keyboard, and we can load up that last quick save. So there's that one, and I'm going to load up real quick that one we were looking at. And now I think if I go in here and I say, give me this guy, and let's look at edit facial, and we'll go in here to expressions, and we'll say, give me a big old happy face. Here, and then I need to make sure I have the right one loaded up in here. Sorry. You know what, we'll risk it. We'll just see. Because it doesn't really matter that much. So I'm going to go back here, and we're going to say, I'm going to go Z all this over to ZBrush, and we're going to turn off GoZ Plus, and we're going to split out the eyelashes and tear ducts. We're going to say current pose, and we're going to say GoZ. There we go. So now we got our big smile face, and let's go all high. No. Okay. So it didn't relink, but that's okay. we can fix that. So we'll say delete all. We'll say clear cache files. So that's underneath your preferences, GoZ. There's a clear cache files in there if you ever need to clear out your GoZ. And then we'll go back in here and we'll say reset. And let's drag this back out here. So now if I say GoZ all, oh, I didn't even have anything set up. Let's see. I'm just going to skip all these. Update current pose, sure. Okay, now edit facial. Let's do a slightly, I guess I like this one. There we go. We'll go Z this back. And then I'll go ahead and update our file. So now when our low res mesh moves, it'll go Z over and it'll move those vert positions. So now my teeth and my smile and my shapes are all moved. That's, again, it's a kind of a weird looking smile, but we can fix that. So we'll go back to my smile face here, expression reference. So we'll load up my smile here, and I'm just going to have this off the screen. You don't need to look at that over and over again. So I'm just going to kind of pause this. Let's see, smile. Thank you, Mike. And if I'm going to be modifying a face here, I'm going to say, probably start off at the lowest subdivision level. And let me just look. Actually, I don't have a mouth open smile, do I? Have it's just a mouth closed. So we'll just make some slight modifications. When I'm using the move brush here, you can see it's got a pretty harsh move by default. That's like set up to 51. I'm going to drop this down to like into the 20s, and that'll allow me to make a little more subtle adjustments here. So I'm also going to go in here to move Accu. It's your move brush with this little Accu curve button, and that'll allow you to kind of pull 2 points. So instead of, if I just use my regular move brush, it kind of has that soft fall off. If I use my move Accu brush, it'll kind of pull to a point, which is useful for like these tight corners in here. For the teeth here, again, if I'm just going to kind of roll with this, we got sped up a little bit by taking the expression from Character Creator and relinking these back up. So got kind of a free smile in there. If I'm ready to go ahead and just start capping these things and breaking the vertex order, because as soon as I break the vertex order on any of these meshes, it's going to break the connection between those, so I won't be able to pose them anymore. But if this is where I want to end up, that's fine for me to do, and I'll start capping the teeth so I can Boolean them. Yeah, so let's see. So the eyelashes, again, we don't really need those. And then any of this other stuff too, like this eye occlusion and this eye tear duct. Yeah, not tear ducts. Tear ducts we can leave on, but it's the eye tear line. Go ahead and turn that off. There we go. So we just want nice solid meshes here. And just for some visual, let's go ahead and turn on X symmetry for these. I'm actually going to leave these eyeballs a little bit separate, because I think that'll be a little bit cooler looking. So the reason, what I'm saying here is if I go in here to append, and we'll go ahead and grab another cube like we did last time, and I'm going to shrink this down here so it's about head sized. We're going to turn on live Boolean. We're going to set this to subtractive. And now when I push this back, again, by having those eyes separated out, we'll get a nice view back here. I was hoping to also get a little bit more of that sinus in here, and we can do that. We can go back in here and we can carve out some of those things to give it a little bit more visual interest, but that's the idea. If I go in here to all high, that will bump this one up, and then these will still be fairly low res, I think. This one, let's see. Yeah, that one just has dynamic subdivisions turned on. So for example, if we want to make these compatible with Booleans, we need to go ahead and, number one, we need to make these teeth fit a little bit better with this head. And number two, we need to cap it. These need to be all solid geometry. Like I said, you could do your Z modeler brush BZM, and you could hover over one edge here. And then you could say like, you know, bridge edges. You could go this side. Oops. Let's see, this side. Mesh has layers. Let's do, let's bake all these layers. That's going to be problematic. So we're all high on our subtools, I should say. Yeah. You know, there is, I don't know if I have this installed, Z plugin. There is a clean, yeah, let's go. So there's a clean tool utility you can download, and you can go through here and you could say bake all layers. If you don't have this installed, you can just go one by one. So go in here to layers, and we have a CC detail kind of baked in to this. I won't get into why, but so there's the upper teeth, and it has a bake layer on it. I'm going to say bake all on this one. I'm going to hit the down arrow key, and we're just going to cycle through all of our subtools and get rid of that CC detail layer because we don't need it. There we go. Okay, so let's get a drink real quick. We got this, we got our head here, and we got our teeth. So back here, we're going to break our vertex order. We're going to go ahead and cap all these. So the manual way to cap these would be to like bridge. We'll do one manual and we'll do one automatic. So we're going to go ahead and bridge across here. And before I get to the end, I'm going to stop short, and we're going to add some midline spans. So we're just going to go across, across, across. And then to sew this up, I'm going to add some spans on this side. So we'll go through here really quick, and we'll just bridge across using, again, our ZBrush brush. And then I'm going to hover over this one. We're going to say, hover over an edge, hold down space bar. We're going to say insert multiple edge loops. And we're just going to, let's see, this many. Yeah, something like this. We'll say Control W, make that all one polygroup, and then we'll go ahead and bridge these caps here. Oh, we do need a midline. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick geometry modified topology mirror and weld. Let's do a mirror across the X and then a mirror and weld. That's just off just a tiny bit. Let's scoot this over. Let's turn on our floor. Basically, I'm going to manually see if I can line this up. Say mirror and weld. There we go. And just to make sure, if you wanted to make sure there wasn't any like really thin lines down the middle, you could go into geometry, modify topology, and there is a weld points in here, so you can just run this, or you can crank up that weld distance just a little bit here, and that'll kind of weld together any points that are really close to each other. But I think we're good to go. So we're going to turn off our floor here. And again, X symmetry turned on. We're going to say bridge edges. And we can go ahead and just sew this up. Now, one of the things it's not going to do is cap those teeth. And that one, I'll show you how to do real quick. Again, we're doing it the manual way this time around. And let's go ahead and make this a triangle here. And let's go ahead and use our mouse. There we go. And if you're ever using your ZBrush brush and it's, you know, extruding polygons or something like that, you can always go in here and switch it to do nothing. So whenever you hover over face and accidentally run a command or a property, or you do something in your geometry you don't want to, you can stop it from doing that. So I'm going to hit Control W. So now we're capped here. If I want to, I can go ahead and say, you know what, let's spin this edge here. Let's just keep spinning that around. Yeah, it's not beautiful, but I guess we can live with it. If you don't want to live with it, you can continue to kind of go through here, and we can like hover over an edge, and we could say like split this geometry. Then we could say like delete this edge here and here, and let's spin this one more time. We'll just spin this edge here. Yeah, something like that. We could bridge these 2 points here. We're just kind of going through and sewing this up, making it a little bit more presentable, because this is not going to be great for Booleaning. It gets really thin back here. Not a huge deal, but I don't know. So that would be one way to manually cap this. Now, there is a problem. If we go hold down Control Shift and grab a little piece of this geometry, then do Control Shift A and then Control Shift drag to invert that, you'll see none of these teeth are capped. You could go through here and hover over an edge, and you could say, like, you know, close convex hole, and you could cap this manually like this. Just go through here and cap. Or you could do a geometry modified topology fill hole, whatever works for you. But like I said, we'll do this upper teeth manually, and if it is giving you a hard time, one thing we can do is we have this geometry just kind of sitting in our subtool. We could manually, or we could temporarily go in here to split hidden. That's underneath your subtool split menu. You could split those off into its own subtool, and that'll make it so that you can go through here and cap without being inconvenienced. So we'll say Control Shift, Control W. So now we've got all of our teeth capped, and this is all one subtool. And then the subtool below it is the rest of the teeth. And if you want to merge these back down, I'm just going to do my hotkey for merge down, which for y'all will be underneath subtool. Instead of split, we're going to say merge down. So now our base upper teeth are back together and everything is all capped. And in fact, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and Boolean this result. But for now, we'll just say crease PG, which will crease our polygroup borders that we manually made. We'll hit Control D to subdivide. And now we can just manually subdivide this. So this isn't dynamic subdivision. This is a real subdivision to give us nice smooth geometry. Now, if you're going to move stuff around, you can always drop back down to subdivision level 1 and then do your broad movement. So if we wanted these teeth to fit a little bit better in this mouth, and then we'll alt tap the head here and we'll drop down to subdivision level 1, and we'll just do our broad movements. And if I want to move the inside of this mouth and not the outside, go ahead and go into here to auto masking and turn on backface mask for your move brush. This is a per brush, so if I go here to the standard brush, it's going to turn off. So move brush now has backface masking turned on, and now when I have that, I can go in here and I can thicken up the gums or the lip or the mouth bag on the inside here, separate from the outside of the face here. And then for the mouth here, we'll go ahead and turn off backface masking so we can go through here, and now we can like move the teeth around. Now, for the little easier way to do what we just did, instead of doing, we'll do Shift D to turn off dynamic. Instead of going through here manually, we can just say geometry modified topology close holes. That will give you, let's see, Shift D. That will close any open hole on your mesh, including the backs of the teeth here. So if we say, let's do Control Shift over this little piece, Control Shift A, split hidden. So if we go back to where the teeth are and we say geometry modified topology close holes, it'll go ahead and close those holes. I thought it would give us, let's say Control W. That's weird. It should give you a poly group, but you're going to see this geometry over here is different from this geometry. So it did close all the holes, but it's not a mirrored operation. If you want to mirror it again, geometry modified topology, mirror and weld across the x-axis. You're going to see it's not, if we turn on the floor, it's not right down the middle. You could manually go in here and just kind of scoot it over, or what I might do is just say like mirror and weld across the X. Control Shift drag over this little nubbin, Control Shift A, which is visibility grow all, Control Shift drag, and then geometry modified topology delete hidden. And then we'll turn on X symmetry, and now we can scoot these back in. And now we have a perfectly symmetrical mesh here. And these are all capped. We didn't have to do it manually. You could zero mesh this result, but I think it's fine. And then we'll go back here to our lower teeth here. And same deal with this. Let's hit Control W to make it all one polygroup here. This looks a little bit mangled. Let's turn on X symmetry. We'll do another geometry modified topology mirror and weld. Let's turn these on here. Scoot this over. Mirror and weld. There we go. So, like I was saying, we could do a geometry modified topology, close holes, and you can kind of see this is kind of fighting, the geometry's fighting with itself. If we go down here to display properties, we can say turn on double. You can see both sides of your mesh, and this purple closed hole is fighting with this yellow. We could hit W and then Control tap down here on the purple, and that will mask out all the purple polygroups so that we just move the purple part. Before we do that, let's go ahead and do again, another geometry modified topology mirror and weld across the x-axis. And then another thing you could do is you go in here to auto masking, mask by polygroups up to 100. And then if you just click on the yellow, it'll just move the yellow. If you click on the, turn on X symmetry, click on the purple, it'll just move the purple. But in our case, I'm just going to hit W, Control tap the purple to unmask it, or you could say Control Shift tap the purple, mask it, Control tap to invert that mask, whatever's easier for you. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pull this purple down through the yellow, and then I'm going to Control tap to invert that, and we're going to smooth. Another thing you could do, because you can Control tap the purple and then Control, let's see, Control tap the purple polygroup, and then when you Control drag, it'll give you an edge ring. It'll kind of do an extrusion. You could use that to your advantage too. And like I said before, you could ZBrush this result. So if you're like, okay, great, I've managed to get these things vaguely not fighting themselves, but the geometry's kind of busted. We can keep our polygroups, so we can say, okay, I want this yellow polygroup and this purple polygroup to be separate geometry. I just want better geometry. We could go in here to geometry. Let's go ahead and store these vert positions. I'm going to Control tap this latest point in history to, be able to snap back to those vert positions. We'll say geometry ZBrush. We'll say same, keep groups, adaptive size down. We want nice, pretty nice even quads. So the lower this adaptive size you do, the more even the quads will be. And then we'll say ZBrush. And that'll go ahead and ZBrush, give us new geometry for the yellow and the blue part, a little more sculptable and predictable. And then if we want to snap back to our original vert positions, we can just go over here to Subtool, Project History, and that'll kind of snap us back. So if we wanted to subdivide and then project history, again, we can get those, subdivide, project history, and we're kind of back where we started. And then you can go through here and you can clean this up or whatever. So, and then we also have our teeth here that are all nice and capped. So if we wanted to go ahead and say, okay, let's subdivide these teeth up here, and we can move them around as a separate subtool. We don't have any sort of masking on, auto masking. Although, if you want to move these teeth around separately, you can go in here to auto masking and turn on topological. You can drop your range down. Anything that's not vert welded, you can just kind of move around on its own. That's an easy way to do that. So let's go ahead and merge these teeth back down. So we'll go ahead and use our hotkey for our subtool merge here. And now we've got these upper and lower teeth. Now these are still separate objects. So if I do Control Shift A to isolate the lower teeth, they're still going to be separate objects. However, if we hit W, and we say delete lower on our subdivisions here, and we say remesh by union, that will go ahead and do a union mesh. It kind of does something weird here. So what I'm going to do is turn off X symmetry, go to unmesh mesh center, and then see if we can't run that again. Come on. There we go. So we did our remesh by union. That went ahead and did a Boolean mesh. And the cool thing about that is, number one, it's all stuck together. However, it's not a Dynamesh where it's going to glue all these little close pieces together. It just ran a Boolean operation on these. One thing to clean this up is I'll go in here and grab a little piece and then Control Shift A and then Geometry Modified Topology Delete Hidden. If you don't get this message, there might have been some floating geometry, which makes ZBrush not work very well. But if you have one solid mesh here, again, let's hold Control Shift tap the latest point in history for this mesh with these vert positions. And then let's do another ZBrush. Let's do half this time. So we have 20,000 points. Let's do ZBrush half, keep groups, smooth groups down to 0. I should have done that last time. And then when I ZBrush, it'll go ahead and give us new geometry built around the polygroups that we had. Let's also, before we do that, let's do another Geometry Modified Topology not mirror and weld. We want to do a weld point. So I'm going to crank that weld distance up just a little bit here. In fact, if you want to turn that open circle on, that'll grab even more points. You can crank that distance up, and that'll kind of merge together any weird spots. We'll also do a quick geometry modified topology mirror and weld, and then ZBrush again, half keep groups. There we go. So this is not a bad result at all. Nice and sculptable, nice and predictable. All the edge rings built in, everything's glued together. Of course, now we can't work on our teeth separately because they're welded into the jaw. But if we're doing 3D printing stuff and we want all these things mixed together, or glued together, I should say, this is probably where we want to be. So we'll do another, project history, Control D to subdivide, project history. And now we have all of our details back. This is a ZBrush piece, and it's all watertight. So if I turn everything else back on, and we go down here to our cube and we push this in, we'll have a nice watertight mesh for those teeth. And while we're doing this, and we're like, actually the teeth need to go into the head, we can just alt tap the teeth mesh and then use our move. Oh, that's selecting the cube mesh. I think we can select, there's the tongue. Maybe we got to go to the inside. Yeah, alt tap to tap the teeth mesh, and then we can just go in here with our move brush, and we can literally go through here and kind of move the teeth around. So just make sure you can kind of see the teeth in here. That'll select the teeth subtool. And then with this Boolean happening, you can look at the cross-section result as you go through here and move this piece around. Yay, so we got our teeth kind of popping. We can go in here to our eyeballs, and we could say, you know what, let's move. Whoa. Go in here to our move. There we go. We can kind of stick that right in the middle. And then, like I was saying here, if we grab the face, and let's see, if we wanted to see more of that sinus cavity, we could go in here to the face, and we could like pull some of that geometry back on the inside here, or we could manually go in after we've done the cross section and kind of slice that piece out. Not really sure what I'm going for exactly, but yes. So let's see what the question. We got some questions. Excellent. Thank you, Kill NPC. Looking to learn to sculpt. I'm seeing a lot of things saying ZBrush hasn't been updated properly in a while. I think the quality is starting to lag behind other tools like Blender 3D Code. Beginner as a pro, avoid overthink may even make ZBrush more fun to learn. I think, especially if you're a beginner, to 3D, I've found personally that teaching somebody ZBrush is far easier. If you're new to ZBrush but you've been doing architectural previs for 45 years and then you try to learn ZBrush, you're probably gonna have a hard time because you've got 45 years of built-in ways of how you like to work for a specific workflow, and you're going from like I said, architectural previs, snapping modular set pieces together in order to get a result, and then you come into ZBrush and you're like, how do I do architectural previs in ZBrush? And that's totally possible, but they're not going to be one-to-one. But as far as just like learning ZBrush, I do have some resources for you on that. And for everybody here, if you go to my a couple places you can find this. So on my YouTube channel here, if you just scroll down here, you'll see an intro to ZBrush new and updated. Go ahead and copy this in here. And then also on my ArtStation page, ZBrush What's New section. This is everything that's happened in ZBrush since 4R8 that's been updated. Just go in here and click on these, and you could go and watch the playlist. And then the intro to ZBrush is in there too. So there's that. If you want to know any, I'll have a ton of live streams. So if you just kind of go through my ArtStation page and kind of look at anything that looks interesting, like Oogie Boogie, you can go in here and you can watch my live streams on how to make his dice and also how to make his body, I think. And in here too, I think if you just go to my playlists, look for the Big Blue Genie. I don't think I've updated. Yeah, live stream full episodes I need to copy a bunch of live streams over, but here's a whole bunch of instructionals if you want to make something like, hey, Mickey Mouse, or a vampire or a goblin or this little Star Wars creature. Or Mario, or a Ninja Turtle. You can probably find a live stream for it. Now, or shoes. You can always just go in here and say, shoes. There we go. And you can like make a boot or make a pair of Nikes or make a pair of Converse. But as far as just like having fun in ZBrush, and ZBrush is far and away the funnest program I've learned. And I've learned a bunch. And you know, your mileage may vary. But again, if you're just brand new to 3D and it's like, okay, I don't know much about 3D, but and you just kind of go through the basics, it'll be like, okay, hit the edit button, turn on X to go into X symmetry. You got a sphere here. Make polymesh 3D. And if you can get over those steps where you drag out an object, go into edit mode, make polymesh 3D, and you have a sculptable surface, and then maybe you also learn one more thing, which is like going in here to geometry and having Dynamesh turned on. And even, you know what, I would even say lower that resolution. Start, you know, using this. Let's move this down a little bit. Use this to kind of sketch in your object here. So if we manually wanted to go through and let's go ahead and let's make a face. So we have X symmetry turned on. I'm going to crank up my Z intensity just a little bit here. And we're going to go through here and we're going to do a smile face. And we're going to go in, just like I said before, we have a move brush here. So if I use my move brush, we can use this to kind of go through and push and pull and start getting features of the face. And then we can kind of, you know, there's a bunch of brushes in here. So we can go B, I, brush, narrow down. Here's your brush palette. And I want to do an inflate. So I'm going to hit I, and then I'll narrow down my brushes to start with I, and then N is inflate. You can hit N. So that's one easy way. And then once you start using brushes a lot, you're like, I'm always using the inflate brush. Then you can set it to a hotkey. So that way I can go to my standard brush, inflate brush, clay buildup, all those things that you end up using a lot. You can set those to hotkeys. And that's basically all you need to know for like the next couple months or a couple weeks or a couple hours, depending on, you know, the speed you like to move. That's really all you need to know about ZBrush for a while. And then just figure out the brushes you want to use. Probably the clay brush, probably the clay buildup brush, probably the move brush. And then if you want to get a little more, like I said, you can use your move brush to do like soft curve moves. And then you can turn on this Acu curve, and that'll allow you to kind of pull to corners and points. So you'll start learning like a little bit of, I don't know, subtlety, but not really. You're just kind of getting a little deeper into the universe. But at the end of the day, it's just basic, you know, going through here, holding down Alt, letting go of Alt, using clay buildup, using a, you know, you'll have like 4 or 5 brushes that you'll use mostly. And in fact, while I'm doing Dynamesh, instead of being like, okay, I got my face blocked in, now let me go in here and crank up the resolution. Instead of doing that, like I'll stay as low as I possibly can. Your first inclination might be to be like, well, let me go in and start getting poor detail. Stay as low as you can, as long as you can, just to really dial in exactly what you're looking for. And look at reference too. So like if I'm going in here and it's like, I'm gonna do a smile face, just I'll have my giant face as a reference here, and then we'll just go through here. And then so dam standard's another good one. You can kind of go through here, and because the geometry is fairly low, you can go through here and you're just like looking at the, what would this be, like the silhouette, you know, and the volumes is the most important part, because everything else will just kind of fall into place if your volumes are looking good and are working. So now we're in the mode where it's like, okay, we've got our basic volume. And if we need more, we can, I want to do ears, or I want to flatten the side of the face out. Well, we can get a little more like, let me, you know, you can do a clip curve that'll kind of push the geometry back, and you can start carving this side out here. And then smooth brush, obviously, is hold down shift to smooth. You can go through here and you just mask here. So we'll just put an ear on here. And we'll kind of rotate this around. Maybe scale it out. Now, this is one kind of weird thing. So if you do a scale, you're going to want to go in here and turn on LSIM with dynamic turned off. So that's kind of a weird thing. But just like going in here and saying, turn on edit mode, make polymesh 3D from a primitive. As long as you can memorize like 3 things to start out with, and LSIM being one of those 3 things, you know, there's going to be a few weird things, but once you learn the basics of that, And the other cool thing too is because we have Dynamesh, and we've been talking about Booleans too, you can just control drag again, and that'll give you more geometry. Again, I kind of don't like to even do that. I'll keep the geometry just nasty for a long time. And this just allows me to just focus, like even this ear volume here, it's like, well, I can still go in here and do the, what is it, the helixes and the inner and outer, I don't even know the terms anymore, but you know, go through here and just start pulling this geometry around. Let's say move AcU off. There we go. And then, because again, you're more focused on the volumes here. And then, so we're gonna push back in here. We got kind of eyeball, and then let's go in here. Let's say BI brush insert primitives. Let's hit M on our keyboard, and we'll just grab a sphere, drag it on our canvas, and then we'll just say split mask points. Now we're getting a little more advanced, but we'll also turn off solo mode. So what we basically did was we dragged out an IMM brush, and that automatically unmasked, and then I went ahead and split that into its own subtool. So now we can have a separate subtool. So now we've got eyeballs that'll make it a little bit easier for us to go through here and work around. When it comes to eyelids and stuff, or if you're going to do like stylized, if you want to start with like stylized volumes instead of sculpted volumes, you could use primitive shapes to kind of go through and build up your volumes, like your nose and your ears. All valid ways of working, all worthwhile to learn. This is a little bit more freeform. You can kind of go through here and just take some big swings, and then you can even duplicate this off and keep it around, or you can control tap points in history, or save them as a layer if you want to. But one thing you can do just for eyelids, let's go ahead and put these eyeballs back a little deeper in here, and we'll scoot out a little more space in here. And that'll allow us to kind of, again, build up that brow ridge, build up that cheekbone, a little zygomatic here, and then we're not getting into super wrinkly stuff yet, but again, just volumes, just volumes, just volumes. Here's the jawbone, your mandible here, and then the lips we're not going to get super detailed on because again, we don't have enough geometry, but we want to make sure that everything's working first. And then eyelids, we could go in and sculpt or give ourselves some geometry. So I'm going to duplicate off these eyes here, and we'll do that and duplicate it off twice. And we'll use a little trick here. Hold down Control Shift, go in here to trim. I'm just going to trim down the bottom here. So now if I go through here with our Z modeler brush, or we could even just do a deformation inflate if we wanted to. Geometry is not great on this, but this might be a better candidate to say extrude polygroup all. Let's hold down Shift and pull along that surface normal. So now we have a separate piece of geo. And again, you could Dynamesh this stuff if you wanted to and change the resolution. This will allow you to, instead of having to go through here and sculpt this, it's sometimes easier just to have a little separate piece of geometry. And we did duplicate this off twice. So if I wanted to go down here and say, give me my lower lids, and let's see if this one does a little better with just a deformation. Nah, not really. There we go. And then sometimes it is useful, especially if you're doing like stylized stuff, to keep these pieces separate for a long time. And of course, if you want, you can go through here and you can say, you know what, let's crank up this resolution just a tiny bit. We'll double it. We'll say back up to 128 or so. And then these here, let's go ahead and move this one up. Oops. This one up above. We'll keep the eyeballs themselves separate, but we'll go ahead and merge the head down with the eyelids. So we'll say merge down, Control drag to re-Dynamesh. Now let's do a little bit more resolution here. Say smooth this out. And even this, if you're like, okay, I don't need to really dynamesh anymore, I'm not taking any more major swings or really going to be taxing the geometry that much. So if you're going to be doing stuff like this and then you want to control drag again, it'll give you new resolution. But just like we were doing, we can always say, you know what, I just want to sculpt this thing to final. We can control tap this point in history to store those vert positions. We can say zero mesh, depth size down a little bit. We'll say target polygon count of maybe 2. And then we'll just give ourselves some new geometry, some new predictable geometry we want to sculpt with. There we go. That's nice and predictable. We've redistributed the geometry so you have more geometry in the ear. And then all we got to do is say project history, Control D to subdivide, project history, Control D to subdivide, project history. Now we have subdivisions. So subdivision level 1 is, again, go in here and get your volumes correct. Subdivision level 2, go through here and start refining your shapes. And then subdivision level 3, you know, the more subdivisions you put in there, the more you'll get closer to like poor detail and stuff like that. We didn't do any mouth bags for this particular guy, but if you wanted to kind of retcon a mouth bag into this person, you definitely could. And I keep calling it a mouth bag because that's what I called it in college, but you could just go and search for that. And this will show you a couple videos on how you can go in here and like put in, make it so that your mouth is able to be articulated, like this one. Let's turn this off here. Like this one here. This has a bunch of, in fact, if you wanted more concentric rings and be able to control the geometry a little bit more for posing, we got you covered there too. So we could say topology. There we go. So ZBrush topology. You can go through here and my stupid face. You go through here and you could split up just your sculpt into different zones and get some decent geometry going so that you can, you know, make things smile or make things emote a little bit more predictably. But that's it. That's basically it. Go through there and just have some fun. And then once you've kind of started dialing in, go grab your reference, go get a, you know, your pre-ref board or whatever, or a video of a face like I have in here, and then just go through and start refining. So in this case, you know, this will start bunching up a little bit more. Is this the right clay buildup? Yeah. And you can use clay tubes, clay buildup, clay brush, standard brush, Damien standard brush. And that's kind of what I'll end up doing, is I'll get my volumes in place, and then if I want to, I'll go into like dam standard, and we'll kind of use this to sketch out like these kind of shapes. And then you can hold down Alt, and that'll kind of pull up to an edge, and then you can let go of Alt, and that'll kind of push down, and go into your clay buildup or your clay brush. Just kind of knock this back. Let's go down. And again, if it's too many polygons and you're having a hard time wrestling your mesh, just go drop down a subdivision level. You don't need to fight your geometry. Just make less geometry available to you, and it'll start behaving a little bit better and smoother. You know, you won't get as many. The less geometry you have, the easier it is to smooth. The smoother your shapes will be. You can go in here and start using your move brush and looking at your contours and making sure they're not lumpy. Yeah, that's a big part of it too. We'll stay our standard brush here. Build this back up. Put a little ear hole in here. And at any point, if you're like, you know, let's say you did want to take a big swing and you're like, I really wanted to go through here and do something crazy with this geometry. You know, let's do a mouse here. And you really start taxing your geometry a little bit here. We can put in some teeth. So if I go in here, and now here's the thing too, is I'm going to alt tap the eyeballs because those don't have subdivision history. So if we did want to go through here and put like a cube down the middle, we could say split that one, shrink this down, and we could even do this where we can say, let's do this, insert multiple edge loops. We'll put a couple more edge loops in here, and we'll hit W, and we'll say I guess we're getting more intermediate now, but not really. We'll say bend arc. Let's kind of bend this backwards. So a lot of little cool built-in things, and some of it is going to be just getting used to. Here's another cool thing too, is if you want to go through here and say we want to ZBrush this. So I'm going to go in. This is a custom menu. You want to know more about that, because why wouldn't you? Because it'll speed you up quite a bit. You just say custom. And somewhere in here will be a custom menu, but if you go back here to the home and you say, let's look at the what's new, you can also go into these playlists here and do a Control F for custom. And that one's custom brushes, and there it is, custom interface and menus, video number 42. That'll show you how to do that. The reason I bring this up is you see how this is going to kind of be a little bit maybe difficult to sculpt on, because as we hit Control D to subdivide, you know, you got these long squares in here. If you want to just redo this, you can say ZBrush same, adapt the size down to 0, detect edges, and that'll go through and look at your object and give you brand new geometry that's evenly subdivided, so that as you continue to subdivide this up, you'll get more predictable, sculptable results. Oh, so that's the other thing too, is while we tax this geometry, now we have a bunch of big squares over here. If you're doing Dynamesh, it's not a huge deal. You can just keep hitting Dynamesh and you'll get new geometry. But if you are ZBrushing, again, you can just, at any point, say, Control tap the latest point in history, and then we'll drop down to, like, so there's level 2. We'll say ZBrush half, ZBrush, just get some new geometry, project history, Control D to subdivide, project history. You're back where you started. You got newly distributed geo. And now you can kind of go through here. Let's crank up a little bit more. Yeah, so now we can start going through here and be like, okay, I'm going to pull this up. Now, if you are working on a thin mesh and you want to start pulling through, it's going to possibly pull through the back side a little bit. You'll start seeing the other. Actually, this side isn't doing it too bad. But eventually you get to the point where you accidentally start pulling in from the back side. Just make sure if you have a really big mesh, or you don't want to do that, make sure you go in here to auto masking, turn on back face masking for your brushes. So basically everything we just talked about is kind of the basics of ZBrush, and then redistributing your geometry and getting, you know, thinking more about your volumes than about details. Because while you're in ZBrush and you've got access to millions of polygons that act performant, it's going to be very, you're going to really want to go in and like do detail stuff. And detail stuff is fun and awesome, but it's going to be, if you're trying to make something and you get caught up in details and then you want to go and change something, it's going to be kind of a pain, and you're not going to want to, and you're going to feel like you're going to break stuff. But if you focus on volumes first, you're more likely to dial something in that's pretty good, and then the details are just kind of icing on the cake, which is where you want to be. So here's our little rat guy, and then you just take it to final, and then after a couple hours more sculpting, you'll have, you know, this is actually scan data. You know, we did some manual sculpting, but there's the detail stuff is all scan data. But eventually you'll get something around that kind of part. And we'll go ahead and, these are already subdivided. These are already subdivided. This could be subdivided. Let's go ahead and say apply. Yes, and then we don't need these on. In fact, if we're done going back and forth between character creator and this, we can go ahead and delete these out of our scene. We don't need the eye occlusion or the tier line or anything like that. So here's our 3D mesh. Here is our Boolean cube. Here's our live Boolean. And here is our cross section. And that might actually work okay. So we could go ahead and make a cross section of these faces and see how it pans out. Oh, looks like we do have an issue with the tongue. So if I alt tap the tongue here, go into solo mode, I hit apply. I probably shouldn't have. I'm going to undo that. We're going to say Shift D to turn that off. And again, geometry modify topology, close holes, geometry modify topology, mirror and weld across the x-axis. If I want to, I can say zero mesh half, depth size down to 0, keep groups, smooth groups down to 0. Give me some new geometry. Let's turn on X symmetry. There we go. So brand new geometry. Subdivide, start sculpting. This is all capped off and should give us a decent result. And let's go ahead and go into the teeth here. And we'll turn on backface masking. And even for these teeth, yeah, that should be fine. Just trying to sink these into the jaw here a little bit. Eyeball. Yeah, okay. So I've been in a couple studios. Let's see. No problem. Trying to transition to 3D and the phase of yeah. It's not. I mean, take it easy and take it slow, and just you can kind of. Another thing too is this is just kind of just a fun little exercise. But another cool thing you can do is just picking something to make, and that's kind of where it's going to be easier said than done for sure. But like, you know, you can pick like this where it's like, hey, give me a Garbage Pail Kid card. There's lots of really interesting techniques that you can use. Let me see if I have an example. This is all texture stuff. Block out part 1 and part 2. Okay, perfect. So basically, you're not going to have access to like all of these techniques all at once, but you can start problem solving. And then as you're problem solving, you can like Google different ways to kind of maybe go about making a waffle texture or something, or Booleans or whatever. And then you can just start doing little mini projects, how to do letters in ZBrush and stuff. So you're not going to have access to everything all at once. And you don't have to do everything in ZBrush. I tend to, but you know, whatever tool is best for what you're trying to work on, give that a shot. But give yourself little. Trying to think of another good, like Oogie Boogie is another good example where, and again, also maybe not. I tend to kind of overthink things where I want to talk about like, oh, here's all this functionality and all this crazy stuff you can do, and I'll save you a little bit of time with more of an intermediate technique. But at the end of the day, you know, not overthinking something, starting with a star, like so. We'll say delete hidden close holes, mirror and weld. Let's say, oops, make polymesh 3D. I think I can do this. Can I? Let's see. Let's just do a quick Dynamesh. Drop that resolution. So start with a shape here. Oh, I have backface masking on. I was like, why is this not working? Dynamesh. There we go. So we want to make Oogie Boogie. We'll start with a star. And actually, this is a pretty good like T-pose of sorts. And we'll go in here and inflate here for the arms and the head and the leg and the belly. And control drag. And then if we need a little more resolution, we can. You don't got to stay super volumes all the time. And then, of course, you're going to want to get reference. I don't really remember what he looks like all that well. But something like this. And again, just using your clay brush, your clay buildup. And we'll do a little bit of inflate, which we've already talked about. And then for the head here, just Alt in here. And then big old mouth here. And again, don't overthink it. Start with Dynamesh or a couple primitives and mush it around and kind of, again, get your volumes going first. And then once you get it to a certain point, zero mesh it. And then you can get, and then you can start looking up a little bit more. Again, it's not nothing in ZBrush is necessarily advanced. It's usually beginner or intermediate. The beginner stuff is like, here's basic functionality, and then intermediate is like, well, you can sculpt cloth wrinkles. So we can go through here and be, okay, give me Let's turn on L for lazy radius here. So you can go through here and you can be like, okay, where things are going to bend. You can go through here and you can kind of start giving little indications of where cloth might end up wrinkling and stuff. And then, actually, let's do this. Let's put in a little, let's not overthink it. I was going to say we could do a Boolean, but I'm like, let's just, another thing you can do is let's turn on Sculptors Pro, and that'll allow you to kind of chew into geometry and it'll tessellate on the fly. So instead of having to constantly Dynamesh, you know, where you go through here and you make a big move and then control drag to re-Dynamesh, you can do that on the fly with BSH, like snake hook with this turned on. So while you pull this out, it'll tessellate on the fly. It'll give you new geometry as you go. So that is really handy for like kind of digging in big old cavernous spaces like so. And then again, we got some detail going, not a ton, but at any point we can also chew this off and we'll go ahead and, I don't know, push this around to the back, I guess. Control tap that latest point in history. We can say ZBrush half, adaptive size down to 0, just get nice even quads here. We'll say project history, and if you want to go even lower, we'll say ZBrush half again, project history, Control D to subdivide, project history. Now we've got subdivisions, and the cool thing about that too is we now have a lower subdivision. So as we continue to subdivide, we can go through here and we can kind of smooth this out. And again, we can go through here and we can sculpt in cloth wrinkles, but you can also say, go into a brush, turn on simulation iterations. Awesome, thank you. And you can use cloth simulation in ZBrush to go through here and help you define wrinkles, or you could say BT transpose cloth, and we could say, let's drag up. Let's do this. Let's say control. I'm going to move my view out so we can do a nice soft transition here. And then now, because I have my transpose cloth, as I move this around, it'll go ahead and wrinkle the cloth as I move it. And there's a bunch of other stuff you can do in here. And if you're ever stuck, you can go in here. That's actually a good point. You could go in here and say cloth, and you'll get a bunch, but you'll also notice like, hey, dynamic cloth simulation, ZBrush 2021. Probably you might want to go to my playlists and look for ZBrush 2021, what's new? Because that's going to give you a playlist. Here, say view full playlist. And here is everything that happened in 2021. It was a big year. I don't know why I choose that as an example, but just start going through video 2, 3, 4. You can start seeing the basics of cloth, dynamic cloth simulation in ZBrush. And you don't have to watch them all, but you know, get an idea of how cloth works, and then you know, have a little bit of fun. For example, we want to move these arms around. Go ahead and mask this, and then again we have our cloth transform. So as we start bending the arm down, it'll start, you know, doing your little cloth. Basically, just cloth relationships. So we can bend this arm down, and then we'll say here, and then we'll go to the top, and then we'll bend this arm in. And as we're doing that, it's kind of bending the cloth. And then we can say Control D to subdivide, and then you can go through here and you can start enhancing this cloth, or we could even go in here to, I think Pablo Gomez has a Geo Softforms brush. And so instead of using like damn standard, which you can totally do, just go through here and just start dialing in like a seam line down the body. You could use this brush to go through here. This one feels a little nicer. You can go through here and start cutting in seam lines. And you can even go through and do, how will we do that too? Drop down to subdivision level 1. You could say this is gonna be kind of dirty, but, or fast. We'll say Control W for a polygroup here. So if I wanted to, I have subdivisions on here. So if I want to make different UVs, I go in here to Z plugin, UV master, unwrap with symmetry and polygroups. Oops, sorry. Work on clone, unwrap, flatten. We'll say copy UVs. We'll go back to our working. We'll say paste UVs. So now our Oogie Boogie has UVs on it. And let's turn that off. Let's switch this back. So not only do we have lower subdivision levels, we also have UVs. And if you wanted to sculpt on this guy laid out, you could say UV map and you could say morph UV. And then while he's in this state, you could go through here and sculpt on him or paint on him in the laid out state. You can also turn off X symmetry if you want to do that. In fact, I don't even know why I'm doing this, because you already have something like this, I think. Yeah, live stream, Nightmare Before Christmas. I think I have this one already. Yeah, there you go. Start with this and go through. Hey, you can even do, yeah, doing all these stitches and stuff. So basically everything we just talked about, give or take, go in there and render it and stuff like that too. So anyway, but that just shows you, you know, how fast and just a few things that you need to know to kind of get started doing the basics, you know. Let's see. Use zero mesh quad meshes with subdivisions for sculpting. These are move around the lower subdivisions, but often they're not as good as they dynamesh meshes because the quads look strange at the edges. So when do I usually switch between zero mesh and subdivisions, or do you prefer dynamesh sculpting till the end? I usually, so basically, kind of like we were talking about, if I'm not going to be doing any big swings, if I'm not going to be really taxing my geometry in really new and exciting ways, that's usually when I'll decide to zero mesh. So if I'm not going to be pulling my geometry around, I'll go ahead and say, okay, I'm pretty set. I'm just going to be detailing from here on out. I got all my major volumes dialed in. Then I'll decide zero mesh, project my details back, and I'm pretty much done. Now that's not to say if, let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and say subdivide one more time. That's not to say at any point, if you were to be like, you're going through here and you got a lot of detail going, and then your art director or you decides to say, dang, I really want to, you know, if I was going to actually do horns, let's do BI brush insert. First we'll alt tap the eyes, BI brush insert. Nope. Comma key. Here. Brush. Insert IMM. Dragon bones. We'll grab a horn out of here. So if I was going to put horns on here, I would just grab some horns. And I would even here, I would probably keep it separate. So I'd say split mask points, alt tap on the head here, drop down to subdivision level 1 first. If I want to sculpt through an object, I'll turn on transparency with ghost turned on. That'll allow me to sculpt through. And then if I turn ghost off, the underlying geometry will kind of block me. So it's not good or bad. It's just what you want to get out of your object. And then if you turn it off completely, you won't see any transparency, but you can kind of start building up like, okay, I want some skin build up around this horn. So you don't even have to be like, oh, I want to integrate this horn. Sometimes if it's going to be a different material, have it as a separate object. But now I'm starting to get to the point where it's like, well, now I didn't realize it, but I've got all this detail on my face. It's like Alfred E. Newman. Got detail on my face, let's say, but around the head and around the horns, I'm going to need, you know, and let's do this. Let's really go nuts. Oh, and also you'll notice if I start going to try to move this around, it's still acting like cloth because I still have my transpose cloth selected. So we'll go BTR, which is our regular old transpose. And then let's say I really want a whole bunch of skin. And again, we'll turn on our LSIM, so we can scale on our local axis here. So something like this. And now, and the reason why I want nice even geometry is just for predictability, because if I go through here and I'm sculpting down here and it's like, oh yeah, this is all the same resolution and everything's feeling really nice, and then I start sculpting on here and things start getting skewed and start detailing weird, that's not ideal, right? But at any point, all you got to do is say, you know what? And if this is getting hard to select and you don't need your older undo history anymore, I might go in here to edit, delete older undo history. So we'll just control tap that latest point in history. You could even go down here to subdivision level 1, say delete higher, and then say same. Give yourself some new geometry, project history, control D to subdivide, project history, control D to subdivide, project history. You're right back where you started. You got new geometry built. It's all predictable now. So now if you want to go through here and start, you know, digging in, and remember, just because it's for cloth doesn't mean you can't use it for skin wrinkles. So if you want to drop down to like subdivision level 2, or hell, we'll keep it at subdivision level 3, and then we can go through here and start using our cloth brushes, or elasticity in our brushes to go through here and like start help making skin wrinkles or whatever. Or even going to the side here, let's say mask lasso, mask this out, fade it out a little bit, and again BTC is transpose classic. I think BTA is transpose cloth for some reason. We'll scooch this in here, and then you could, like, you know, go through here and just kind of use cloth on just this little section here. It's got some crepey dinosaur skin for his horn sheath. I don't know. It's weird. Whatever. You get the idea. Yeah, so the world's your oyster. use Dynamesh, switch back to ZBrush, switch back to Dynamesh if you want. It's easy enough to kind of go through and juggle your geometry, etc. Let's see. Cool. So, let's do like we were doing. Oh, do I even have that? Yeah. So we were doing a cross section. Let's keep doing that. So right now, if I can go in here to live Boolean, we have a cross section of a face, like a DICOM viewer. And, you know, let's say I wanted to take a cross section here. Right now, it's using this whole big cube, and I really just want this back plane with a little bit of depth. So what I'm going to do with this cube selected, we're going to go into solo mode, and I'm going to say geometry. Let's make it so you can see a little bit better. Group by normals. That's underneath polygroups here. Wow, there it is. Polygroups, group by normals. What that's going to do is look at your object and give you a polygroup on all the different sides. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to just take this pink polygroup, so I can hold down Control Shift and tap this pink polygroup, and then Geometry Modify Topology, delete hidden. Now if I want to give this thickness, I could go into my ZModeler brush and say extrude, polygroup all, and pull some thickness. I could go in here to dynamic subdivision. We could turn that on, turn off smooth, and then just crank up some thickness in here. This is fake thickness, so you can turn off D and Shift D will toggle that on and off. But if you're happy with this, you could say dynamic apply. Just make sure if you do that, go back in here to dynamic, turn thickness off. And then you can turn your smooth subdiv back up if you want to. So that's another way to do thickness if you want. I should mention, because I kind of didn't, if you do have if we're not doing dynamic thickness, and we are just going to extrude, if you extrude this way, it's fine. If you extrude the other way, it's going to flip your normals. No big deal. Just go down here to display properties and turn on flip. There we go. So we've taken that back part here, and because I'm going to do a quick geometry or polygroups, group by normals, geometry modify topology, mirror and weld across the x-axis, just in case. So I've got this sliced through the head, and now if I go into live Boolean here, it's still live, so I can go through here and I can make this cross section wherever I want. but it hasn't been applied yet. So I can kind of see a preview of what it would look like. The mesh is kind of sliced through here, but I can't like take the front of this whole face off or anything like that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to turn off live Boolean. So basically, I'm going to merge all of these objects here into one subtool here. So I'm going to say, with all these showing, I'm going to go down here to merge visible, and that's going to merge all my visible subtools into one subtool like this. And then for my cross section here, I'm going to select that cube, and then in my merged, I'm going to append that cube here. So now I'm going to set this one to subtractive, turn on my Boolean. If I'm ready and I want to Boolean this, and I think I am, I've capped everything. Everything should be nice and Booleanable. And in fact, we can do a couple. Let's take this cube and let's control drag out a copy. I'm going to do one a little deeper. So we're going to slice this guy's head a couple times. Control drag. So with these two showing, I can go down here and I can say Boolean, make Boolean mesh, and it's going to slice out those pieces. Give it a second because we're working with several million polygons here. Get some more coffee. There we go. So now, that's going to do a U-mesh result. So if I go in here and look, you're going to see this is our slice through mesh. And then if I do a Control Shift, let's grab select rectangle. And I grab this one here. And let's switch back. So here is our one. And again, you could, I don't know that it's totally watertight, but you go through here and you clean this result up. But there's our one slice through. And then here's our other. And I wish I could find the one piece thing that I was thinking of when I wanted to do this project, but here's our other piece here. So 3 slices through here. And in fact, let's see if I can try to crash ZBrush. I'm not trying to, but this might. I'm just going to take the rest of his body off here. And again, we're dealing with like 13 of millions of polygons. So as usual, ZBrush is a champ when it comes to handling polygons. Yeah, that worked fine. So a little bit more manageable of an object here. We could even do this. We could do, let me do a group by, not a group by normals. I want to do an auto groups, and that will group anything that's not vert welded into its own piece. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Right above that is auto groups. And like I said, anything that's not vert welded will get its own poly group, and then we could split this thing out. But we'll let that run. Come on back. And again, you could run auto groups if you ever want to. You can just grab a little piece. Oh, let's not do knife curve. Let's do Control Shift, select lasso. You can grab a little piece of a mesh, do Control Shift A, which is visibility grow all, and then you can hit Control W to make that its own poly group here. And then same thing with this one, grab a little piece of it, Control Shift A, and then Control W. Oops. Control W to make it its own poly group. Here. Or you can go in here and say auto groups. And let's do a quick mirrored weld. Yeah. All right, so we take this little piece here. And maybe the little tongue piece. We do have some floating meshes, so if you want to take all the major meshes here, Control Shift drag, geometry modify topology, delete hidden, and we'll switch back here. Now we have all of the pieces of the face all split, and then we can isolate just this middle piece here. And you could go through here and you could sculpt this and make it look like it was all innards and, you know, like an actual biopsy cross section or something. But yeah, that was the idea. For some reason, I wanted to do that, but I don't know. Let's see, what else we got? One question: how to make mirror reflections, but precisely along the local axis? Why does mirror not work like mirror and weld? There's a couple different ways to do mirror across an axis. Let me think. So we want to do a mirror reflection along a local axis. But why does mirror not work like mirror and weld? So let's see if I can explain this. We have our boogie here. And let's go ahead and say delete lower. So here, if we turn on our floor, and we'll just do the Y direction. This is right down the middle of our world axis here. So if I make a change to one side of the mesh and not on the other, and then I do a geometry modified topology mirror and weld across the X, it will mirror this side of the object to the other side. And you'll see it's not perfectly symmetrical down the middle. So this is also an easy way to kind of make your stuff symmetrical right down the middle. Another cool thing we could talk about really quickly is if I wanted to make this yellow and blue part of a seam line, what I like to do is go in here to hold down Shift and go into Brush, hold down Shift. While you're holding down Shift, go in here to Smooth Brush Modifiers and make the 6 weighted smooth mode, and that'll allow you to smooth between polygroups here. Now you could do this manually. You could go in here, like if you had detail you wanted to protect, you could go in here to masking and you could say mask by our polygroup border, or no, sorry, groups. And then we could say, you know, grow mask a couple times and then Control Tab to invert that. And then you go to deformation, polish by features, and just crank that up with open circle, and that'll smooth out. It'll mask everything so it protects your details, but it also smooth out this midline. The reason I'm doing that is I can Control Tab the latest point in history. You already know this. We'll say Zero Mesh, half, keep smooth groups down to 0. We'll get some new geometry going. And we're going to keep that nice, smooth, yellow, blue border. So when I Zero Mesh half one more time, and then we'll say project history, Control D to subdivide, project history. And then if I want to go in here to Z plugin, UV master, work on clone, I can now, you know, unwrap with polygroups here, and we have a much smoother slice. So if I say flatten here, even better. And then we want to copy those UVs, and then we want to go back here and paste. So you can use that for your UVs, and you could go through here and yeah, I guess we could just do it real quick. Turn off live Boolean. Really quickly, let's do a sphere. Edit. I'm not going to make them all polymesh 3D. Actually, I can. We'll make it a polymesh 3D, and then we'll go down here to initialize, and we'll say Q cube, and I'm going to scale, BTR, so regular old transpose, insert, let's say bevel, mirror and weld in the Z, W. I don't know why this gives me so many problems. Bend curve. No, we could do a bend curve. Yeah. Instead of a bend arc, we'll do a bend curve. Hit Control W. Sorry, bear with me here. D for dynamic. Yeah, that'll work. So we're going to say B, create insert mesh, new, and then we're going to say stroke curve. So now we'll have like a stitch brush. There we go. So we'll go back here And now I'm going to insert a sphere, and we're going to scale the sphere down. I just need some, like a little placeholder thing that doesn't have subdivisions that we can use. So here we can say stroke, curve functions. We're going to frame our polygroup border here. We're going to turn off X symmetry, and we're going to tap along. You know what? We're just going to duplicate this off. Say delete lower. Go into solo mode. We're going to frame. We're going to tap. We're going to make our brush size smaller. We're going to go in here to our brush properties, and we're going to say depth. We're going to drag this down so it's embedded. There we go. So we've got our little stitches here. We're going to tap. We're going to say split mask points. We're going to hit D for dynamic. And now we've got, not only can we use that for our UVs, we can also use it for our, to kind of frame our mesh. And now, yet again, you want to do a little bit of storytelling. So you want to make sure that, you know, where, add. Go, you know, go look at reference. Geez, go look at your reference. I feel like I had lost. Let's see. Tablet properties. Mapping and Windows Ink. There we go. For some reason, turning Windows Ink on and off. if you lose your pressure sensitivity. But anyway, go through here, and the interaction that you would have between, and God, you could even capture this as a brush as well. Let's talk about that. So if you wanted to go through here and be like, all along the side here, you're going to have a little bit of puckering where, crank this back up. And in fact, we could even go in here, be like, okay, you're going to have this kind of puckering along a corner or along this section, you know, where it kind of bunches up where things get sewn. You could even say BX tractor and then hit G. Actually, let's hold down Control Tap the latest point in history. G and then drag, and that'll give you a new brush, and then you could literally use this brush to kind of create that puckering so that it looks like as you're, you know, doing, let's say Control D one more time. Maybe get these out of the way. Yeah. So as you're going along here, and in fact, even like we did before, if you wanted to sculpt on this, go in here to UV map and morph your UV. If it's easier for you to sculpt like this, you can literally go along the side here and be like, do, 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 do. So now you'll get your puckering, you know, sculpt like that. But anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, reflection. So here, we'll say I'm going to set it in level 1, 2, delete higher, delete lower. So we're in the floor axis. I'm going to say geometry modify topology mirror and weld across the X. That is our world axis, and we can mirror across that world axis. However, if I go in here and we want to, I guess have a cube on both sides here, if these are like his dice or whatever. And then I say split mask points. Now we have two objects with their own local axis. So now if I turn off LSIM and I do geometry modify topology mirror and weld, it's going to mirror this one to that side. However, I turn this on and say mirror to weld, mirror and weld here. Solo mode, mirror and weld, X symmetry turned on. It should mirror on its own local axis. Let me turn off the floor. I'm missing here. Try this. Yes, okay. Mirror and weld. Oh, well, what axis am I on? Z forward, X, and yeah, that is correct. Huh. Let me see. Local sim, mirror and weld. X-axis. I would expect this to mirror to the other side, but it's not. Anyway, you can have a local axis like we're doing here, where it'll mirror on the X, Y, and Z along the local axis of the bounding box of your individual objects. And you can also have dynamic. So if you want to have like, here is your Z axis, you can use your gizmo to determine, here's my Z forward, here's my X. So if I do a mirror and weld across the X axis, it's going to take the X axis of your local gizmo axis. So that was kind of confusing, but you have your world axis here that you can mirror and weld across, and then you have a local axis that you can mirror and weld across from your world axis. So Z forward, X and Y to the left, and Y and up and down. And then you can also turn on dynamic for the gizmo to be your axis, basically, for your local axis for your object. I'm trying to think, do I have something for that? Let me see. And you can get fancier than that. ZBrush gets a little bit weird when it comes to like instancing objects. You can use like nano mesh or array mesh for that type of thing. And you can get fancy with nano mesh too, like with planes. I think I have some of that in here, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I really answered that question very well. Sorry about that. Make mirror reflections, but precisely along a local axis. Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering. Okay, this is probably a good example. So we have horns here, and then we say mirror and weld. That'll mirror and weld across the world axis. However, if I say, actually, maybe that's why. Hold on. Turn off X symmetry. Grab this one. Split hidden. Okay, so now I have an object here just sitting in space. Let's go ahead and get rid of this one. If I do a LSIM is turned off, I do a mirror and weld across the X-axis, it's going to look at the entire world axis and then mirror and weld it on the other side. If I turn on LSIM and do a mirror and weld, it's going to look at the local axis of the object. So it's going to take the bounding box, go down the middle, and then it'll just mirror and weld across that local axis. If I hit W and then I go through here and change the direction of this axis, so the Z is kind of pointing out this way, and I still have mirror and weld across the X, so the X is this way, I can do a mirror and weld across the X-axis, and it should mirror like, I need to put it here. Although, to your point, I don't know that we can do a deformation mirror across the X. Oh yeah, you can. Okay, so if you have LSIM turned on with dynamic turned on, no, that's always across the world. Yeah, you're right. So now if I do a mirror and weld across the X, that is working how I would expect. But to your point, if I do a mirror, it's not going to mirror across that local axis. Okay, now I understand. Yes. That's a good question. That would be a good request, is to be like, is there a way to have a deformation mirror that respects LSIM and dynamic LSIM? That could be useful. Make a request. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, so my custom UI, it looks like I missed some. Transition, quad meshes, switch, default standard. And yeah, my custom UI stuff like we talked about earlier. You can just go in here, home, and then what's new, and then in here, Control F, custom, and then go down one more. Video 42, create your own custom user interface. And this is where, once you get comfortable, or once you know, like, my rule of thumb is if I do something all the time, like if I'm constantly going from like, let's turn this off here. going from like dam standard to the clay buildup brush, then I'll make a hotkey for my clay buildup, and I'll make a hotkey for my dam standard. I'll make a hotkey for my standard brush. So whatever you're using all the time, like second to second, make a hotkey for it. If you use something a lot, but maybe not every second, you can make a custom menu and you can assign that to a hotkey. So you'll see my Pav custom in here, and I can hit Alt A and I can go through here, and if, you know, I can go in here in my Z spheres if I use them every once in a while, and geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld, and mirror are going to be next to each other as opposed to deformation mirror, and then geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld, and then you're going blind going through here in these menus. So if you use stuff a lot but not hotkey worthy, then go ahead and put it in here. And then if you use stuff every once in a while, like maybe every couple sessions, you can hit the comma key and you can just store stuff. Whoa. Looks like I enlarged this somehow. Yeah, you can just kind of grab the bottom. You can go through here and you can like store stuff in your brush light box. You can go down here to like custom, just throw stuff into my IMM. It's like, oh yeah, my chain brush or whatever. You can go and load that up, or an alpha brush or something that you use every once in a while. You just throw it into your light box. So those are my three basic, you know, something I use all the time, hotkey, something I use quite a bit, custom menu, something I rarely use but is sometimes nice to have around for quick access. Then just throw in your light box location. And our little weird dude. What else we got? How did it load so fast after the crash? Oh, it didn't actually crash. It pulled through. But if we, you know, while you're working and if you're afraid you're going to crash again, just hit 9 on your keyboard to hit quick save. And then, you know, if you did have to restart ZBrush, this is a, you know, speed on your computer. ZBrush will run on anything, give or take. So it's pretty forgiving when it comes to specs. But this is a fairly nice computer. So when I need to load something up, it's pretty quick. And then I hit quick save. So I'm just going to go to my last quick save here. That's going to load that Z project, and we're right back where we started. Didn't lose anything. So keep that. And if you ever do crash, sometimes just hit the comma key on your keyboard, go in here to quick save, and you might have like a little crash file Z tool out here that you can load up. So you probably didn't lose anything, but just to play it safe, I like to hit quick save. There's also some file save as preferences stuff in here you can do. Save next is Alt Control S is nice to save incrementally, just in case. Not that you would get a corrupt file that often, but every once in a while, I suppose. Save incrementally. Let's see. Oh, thanks. You save work as a project or a Z tool. Usually if I'm just kind of messing around, I'm pretty Z tool focused. So I'll just say tool save as, and what that allows me to do is if I save a Z project or a quick save, it's going to save all of this stuff in here. So it's going to start bloating your files. So it's like, okay, we've got this original pre-Boolean mesh in here that's a couple million, and then we've got this U mesh in here that's a couple million. So if this stuff you don't need, you can delete it out of here. You just go select it and then just say delete, and that'll delete that subtool. You can say delete all if you're not going to do Oogie Boogie anymore. Say delete all, that'll get rid of all your subtools. But if you go in here to File, Save As, it's going to save all of this stuff in here. So you could either clear this out, or what I would probably be more likely to do is like, okay, I'm working on my Oogie Boogie working file, and I don't need this file up here anymore, so we'll say delete that out of here. So I'm kind of working in here. I'm going to have this one selected. I'm going to go to Tool, Save As, and this will just save it as a Z tool, and it's only for my subtools in here. So it's a much smaller file. And then I'll go in here and I'll do Tool, Save As. We'll call this, let's throw this on our desktop here. There we go. So now just the rat guy subtools are saved in that Z tool. And then if I start with a new, what else do we need in here? Here is our working like biopsy file, I guess you could call it. Or if you want to, if you're like, you know what, I just need to clean up a few of these things, we can say delete all. That'll clear those ones out. We don't need the stitch anymore. We can say delete all. Although I will say, we might have lost it. Once you make a brush that you really like, you can save that. So you can just go in here to brush, save as, and then save it in your Lightbox. So if you ever go in here and you start saving a bunch of these like we have here, we'll save it in our IMM brush folder. So and I think I already have it, but there's like probably a stitch file in here or a chain. Yeah, this one right here. So we'll just double click this one. And then now we'll have a little stitch file. So I didn't even need to make the stitches. I already had one in there, but that's really useful. This will stick to it. Or you can frame it like we did. We framed our UV border or our polygroup border. But you don't have to. You can go through here and you can just drag along your mesh and it'll stick to it. And if you want it to embed a little bit more, just remember going here to depth and you can lower that down and then tap to update the curve and it'll drop right into your mesh. And then you can just tap off and say split mask points, and now they're separate. And now we can say geometry, divide. Oh, another thing too is we killed the subdivisions on this, but if you hit reconstruct, oh, maybe that was the lowest subdivision level. If we hit subdivide and we subdivide and then you say delete lower, all you got to do is go in here to reconstruct and it'll reconstruct back. As long as you haven't added any geometry, it should reconstruct back fine through your subdivisions. If you ever lose your subdivisions, you can get them back, generally speaking. Yeah, so that's our working file here. Yeah, so you can clean these files out. And these are just kind of our work on clone files, so we can say delete all. So you can manually go through and clean up your meshes, etc. And then this is our biopsy pieces. What else we got? I was wondering, when sculpting, is there a certain direction you would stroke? Kind of depend. In fact, that's a good thing to bring up. Go in here to ZBrush Masters Complete Series. I'll go ahead and link y'all to this. If you really want to get into sculpting, these are the masters that'll tell you how to sculpt. So in fact, this one here, Geo Nakpil, and Magda's in here. And the reason I bring them up is I'm currently using some of their brushes, or Pablo Munoz Gomez made this Geo Soft Forms brush here. So this one will allow you to kind of go through here, and it'll allow you to kind of pinch. Sorry, get some. So for example, we're going to go through here into the corner of the mouth. I want this to kind of go up, and then this one I want to kind of curve around, and then this one I want to kind of dig in. So I'm going to make it a very large brush, and I'm just going to kind of work this form here, and then I'm going to go and look at the contours. I'm a really big fan of preferences, edit. Where is it? Edit, and then turning off align cursor to surface. That's on by default, and this will kind of show you the direction of the surface. I don't usually need that on, so I'll usually just go in and turn that off. But basically, if you're going to go through here and start refining your forms, I might go in the direction of the volume, for example, or I might go into my clay brush. If I'm using my clay buildup brush, I'll probably go do like a cross contour of the volume because I want to build up. And Geo will explain this better than I can, but you want to make sure you get some nice clean volumes. You're not getting like lumpy. And if you are getting lumpy, just literally go in here to the side and let's turn our Z intensity down on our move brush. And then we'll just kind of go through and fix those contours. And then you could use inflate. Instead of using a clay buildup, you can go through here and you can inflate and then go back to your clay buildup, and you could start working volumes next to each other. And that's just kind of the basics. So if we want to go in here to like the ear, and again, you want to kind of dig in with maybe the Damien Dam Standard brush, and then go back in with your standard brush, kind of pull this out, and then you'll see you start getting kind of maybe wobbly. So just go through here with your move brush and just start looking at your contour, your cross contour volumes. Just kind of going through here and moving stuff around. And then let's see, yeah, so this will kind of pull around here. So start building up a ridge. So, and also remember that you can mask. So if this is supposed to go up underneath, just mask this and invert it. Control tap and then control tap on the outside. And then don't be afraid to go through and just move that stuff around. And then you can go in here with your soft forms brush, hold down Alt, let go of Alt, and then I'll kind of dig in. And again, use your move brush, kind of move that stuff around. So things start fitting in and feeling really good. And then if you need to, if you're fighting your mesh, just drop down to like subdivision level 2 and then, you know, mask the upper part, unmask the lower part or whatever, and start moving stuff around and looking at your draft of your face here and getting some good reference. I don't have any great reference for faces right now, but go through your folders. Let's see if we can. So go ahead and mask this. Control tap to invert that mask. Control tap to kind of blur that mask out a little bit. W, Alt. Hold down Alt. And so W to go into gizmo mode. Hold down Alt to kind of drag down your mesh. And you could use this, kind of go through here and set your pivot. Control tap to blur that mask out a little bit more. So now you get a nice soft fall off. Get a little, I don't know, different look. And again, if you start taxing your geometry too much, you can always zero mesh, or you can dynamesh everything together, or zero mesh and project history to get your details back. You don't have to lose work every time. Just make sure that you know the techniques to kind of get your work back and project your details back and your poly paint back. ZBrush is very elegant at allowing you to kind of jump through and kind of stay artistic and fast moving. And also remember when you're doing that too, like if you want to have volume preservation, you can use your, let me see, let's do that again. Use your cloth brush. So we'll go through here, invert that mask, blur that a little bit, and then BTA is transpose cloth, set the pivot, and then so as we kind of bend this, you'll get those wrinkles happening. Now, I'm not in love with that, but it might give you a little bit of a start. There we go. Not that it's, and again, get good reference, try to figure out what you're trying to do, because if you'll end up with like a dish towel look for your ears, which probably isn't what you're going for, but if there is some sort of a creature wrinkle, animal kingdom image that you can find that you're looking for, or you're looking to hit, that'll save you a lot of heartache. Oh yeah, and as far as like certain directions, you know, building up volumes with your clay buildup brush, and then checking your contours to make sure that your volumes are nice and round and make sense. And really, it's like origin and insertion too. So, you know, if you have your mentalis or your chin, basically, and then you have a muscle or a ligament that goes from a bony landmark, it's probably going to go in a fairly, I mean, it could wrap around underlying forms, but generally speaking, it's going to go point A to point B. So you want to make sure you don't have a bunch of lumpy forms. So you're going to sculpt, you could sculpt in that direction. And then if you want to build up a muscle mass or a muscle belly, then you'll probably go against that direction and use your clay buildup or masking. You know, if you want to kind of control a little bit more, you could mask this area out, invert it, and then go and do like a little insertion and inflate, and then go back in here with your Damien Standard or your whatever brush. And now you've got like skin pulling in a direction, and then muscles and ligaments. And that's kind of what it's all about too, is you got your bony landmarks, which are your points, and then you've got your flats, which are kind of your tendons and your ligaments, and then you've got your rounds, which is kind of your muscle bellies. And between those three, you can get some pretty compelling shape language. And again, when we're just talking about pure aesthetics, you want to make sure you're not too even. You're not too like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. You want to mix it up a little bit, and maybe focus some of your details in a certain area, and also thematically, what story are you trying to tell with this weirdo? In our case, he's I don't know what this thing is. And this is also like right down the middle too, so maybe little off center. Or now this is another thing too, like when do you start breaking symmetry? I try to stay symmetrical as long as possible, and then I'll go back through and I'll drop down to like subdivision level 1 or subdivision level 2, and then I'll break symmetry when I'm about to go final, and that'll be whatever I'm going for here. And that way I'm already fairly detailed, and then I just need to go in here and make that face. I don't know if I could make that face in real life, but you get the idea. Oh, actually, yeah, the baseball image too, if you want to know how to make that. And that actually uses a lot of the stuff we've talked about today. So back here, actually, it might be easy to find in my art station. If you see something that looks fun, like, hey, this baseball or that Ninja Turtle, just go ahead and click on it, and then you can see, here's like a little making of, if you want to see kind of a basic overview of how I would go about doing it maybe. And if that looks interesting, here's part 1, here's part 2. And now you can spend a couple hours with me kind of going through technique and stuff. So same thing with the Ninja Turtle. Here's kind of a basic turnaround. Here's a quick making of, so you can kind of get an idea of, okay, what's he doing? How's he doing it? Blocking stuff out. Okay, that looks pretty interesting. And then just keep scrolling down, and you can see Z modeler stuff, and how to make the Pizza Hut vintage sign, and how to make a skateboard knee pads shell, that kind of thing. Do you do one-on-one sessions, 15-minute conversation exchange for pizza? I used to do CG Master Academy, but then I got a new job and I don't have a ton of time. So not right now. Maybe at some point I'll get back into doing teachy stuff. Is there any way to pack UVs in ZBrush? Kind of. So like we were doing and yes, there is. So for example, we have subdivision level 1. Let's do this. I want to save, control tap this latest point in history. We want to store all of this detail that we have. But I wanted ZRemesh this. So we're going to say ZRemesh half, keep groups, smooth groups down to 0. And then while I'm doing that, I'm going to say project history, half, project history, half, project history, half, project history. There we go. So we have a low res, and then we can start subdividing this up and getting our detail back. There we go. And if you ever have like a weird issue, it's not too bad. You can just go in here and smooth them out. But sometimes BHR is your history recall brush. Will turn off X symmetry, and you can use this to manually go back in and project little error areas that you have, and we'll turn X symmetry back on. So now we have no UVs on this currently, but like we showed before, you can go in here to Z plugin, and you can say UV master, symmetry polygroups, work on clone. We'll just use our polygroups for here. We'll say unwrap, and then when we hit flatten, if you don't like where these are, you can control tap these, and you can just move them. Whoop, BTR. You can go through here and move, scale, rotate them around. And if you go outside of the 0 to 1 space, it's no big deal. ZBrush will recalculate you a new 0 to 1. So you can go through here, and again, like I said, move stuff around. You could even, if you wanted to, you could even go through here. This is basically, you just treat it like geometry. So you can mask this part out, and then you could say Control Shift, clip curve. You can clip this to a straight line. You could even do like a open border, and then you could do like a deformation polish by feature and relax your interior. And again, this is geometry, but it is your UVs, and ZBrush will allow you to manipulate your UVs just like it's plain old geometry. And then if you're happy with this, you could say unflatten, and then copy those UVs, and then go back to your original mesh you're working on and paste those UVs. So then when we go back here to our UV map, we can morph our UV, and there you go. I think that's correct. Yes. Also, you can also create UV seams by creasing. So this is all in the my YouTube channel. Oops. This is where I had those projection errors. So if I want to get these back, BHR, and then turn off X symmetry, and then literally go in here and then just use your history projection brush to kind of go through and grab this detail back manually. And this is camera based, so you're going to want to move your camera around just where you're looking straight down at it, and then you can get just basically project any areas that didn't manually project so well. And then we'll turn X symmetry back on. Something like that. I don't have a whole lot of time for personal projects anymore, unfortunately. Soon, I hope, at some point. Yeah, and sometimes it is useful to save as a Z project. The only thing you need to be careful of when you save as a Z tool, it's going to want to rename. So we save tool, save as. Save as. We'll say test. It's going to rename that one. So if you don't want that, you can say insert. Just put in like a null shape here. We'll even turn on X symmetry. Scale this down so it's just kind of like hidden in the middle of your object, so you'll just have a guy sitting out there. And then when we save this, we'll say desktop test 02. There you go. So that'll kind of catch that name. If you go in here to file, save as, it won't rename the top one, but it will save everything in here. So depending on what you're saving and why, it's sometimes useful. Let's see, ZBrush 2022, look the same. Are there new features? Yeah, and I haven't, I'll be honest, I haven't really been keeping up that much. I'm hoping to get back into it, but yeah, there's been some really cool stuff. In fact, since 2020, yeah, up to 2025. So if you go here to ZBrush, what's new? If you want to see what's new since then, here's 2022, and then 2023, 2024, and then 2025. All the new stuff. You can just go in here and click on this, and then oh, this one I have all broken out. Some of them I'll just have a bunch of videos in here, and then on the really long ones like the ZBrush 2021 what's new, you can go in here and there's like 106, so you can actually go into the playlist and check those out. If you go to art school, would you recommend it to others? I've been looking at CalArts and Nomon, but the costs are staggering. I actually, do I have something like that in here? Let's see. Oh, I'm not signed in. That's okay, because I should be able to go to blog. Do I need a college degree? I can't. I went to Ringling, and this was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So anything I tell you now is going to be just kind of like my parents telling me how the world is when they haven't been in the real world in 25 years. I'm kind of the same for you, where it's like, this is my opinions based on really old data. But for what it's worth, you can go check that out. I don't know if I have a great answer. It's basically a non-answer, but you know, there's some good things about college and there's some bad things about college. Cost being one of those, like you said. So yeah, and the industry as a whole, like I don't know, video games and film, it seems to be kind of tough. So 3D modeling, and yeah, I don't know, fingers crossed. Hopefully everything gets a little bit better than it has been historically lately, if that makes sense. Good luck. Thanks everybody. We're up at time, everybody. Cool. And like I said, hopefully I'll be able to get back in here and do some more streaming and do some more personal projects soon. But yeah, keep on creating.